Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you, the boss mocked, and she was left frozen when she found out who the janitor really was. Don't forget to comment from which country you're watching us. The hangar echoed with the laughter of employees while the metallic sound of tools filled the air. Claudia, the director of the private aviation company, strutted among the mechanics reviewing every detail of the new helicopter they had just acquired. She was young, elegant, and proud of her power. Around her, everyone admired her or pretended to. Everyone except Omar, the silent janitor who arrived every morning before anyone else and left at the end of the day with his broom in hand and his gaze lost on the horizon. "Omar, clean that area well. We have important visitors today," she ordered him without looking at him. "It's already clean, ma'am," he responded with a calm voice. "Clean?" she repeated, laughing with irony. "I doubt a man like you knows when something is ready." The laughter of those present accompanied her. Omar simply nodded and continued his work, but there was something in his eyes, a mixture of patience and contained sadness that no one noticed except one of the older mechanics who lowered his gaze uncomfortably. Days later, during an impromptu meeting on the runway, Claudia was showing off the capabilities of the new helicopter. With her haughty tone, she wanted to make a funny comment. "Who dares to fly it? Come on, Omar," she said between laughs. "If you manage to make it fly, I'll marry you." The group burst into laughter. She said it as a joke, believing that the janitor would blush or make excuses. But Omar looked up, observed the helicopter, and without saying a word, left the mop aside. His firm and serene step contrasted with the commotion of the others. "Hey, wait, where are you going?" Claudia asked, confused as she watched him climb into the cabin. The laughter gradually faded. Omar sat down, adjusted his seatbelt, and his hands began to move with a precision that left everyone paralyzed. He turned on the panel, checked the controls, and pulled the levers with movements that only a professional would know. The roar of the engine broke the silence. The helicopter rose just a few centimeters with perfect stability. The employees stepped back in amazement, and Claudia, unable to speak, looked at him in disbelief. When the helicopter descended smoothly, everyone's hearts were racing wildly. Omar got down with the same calm with which he had gotten up, picked up his mop, and simply said, "You can continue with your demonstration now, ma'am." No one dared to laugh. Claudia watched him in silence, trying to understand what had just happened. "How did you know how to do it?" she finally asked in a low voice. "Let's just say I had to learn. To save lives," he responded, looking at the horizon. In that instant, the atmosphere changed. No one else saw him as just a janitor. And although Claudia tried to maintain her composure, inside her something began to crack: pride, shame, and curiosity. "Omar, wait," she told him before he left. "I want to talk to you in my office." He nodded without looking at her. As he passed by her, Claudia felt a discomfort she had never experienced before. For the first time, she didn't have control. That afternoon, as the sun set over the hangars, Claudia couldn't concentrate. In her mind, the image of that man turning on the helicopter with the confidence of an expert kept repeating, who was he really, and why was he there cleaning floors? If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on what you're thinking. When she finally saw him enter her office, the silence became heavy. Omar remained standing with respect, but his firm gaze made her feel exposed. "I didn't know you had experience in aviation," she said, trying to sound friendly. "I left that behind a long time ago," he responded without emotion. "Why?" she asked with sincere interest. Omar looked at her intently. "Because sometimes the sky gives you glory, but life teaches you to fall." His words made her shudder. She didn't know what story was behind that look, but she sensed it wasn't just any story. And without understanding why, Claudia began to feel something she didn't expect: admiration. But just as she was about to ask another question, an urgent call interrupted the conversation. Someone had had an accident in the testing area. Omar reacted first, grabbed a first aid kit, ran out, and shouted, "Call emergency services." Claudia followed him, bewildered. That man not only knew how to fly, he knew how to lead. Omar arrived first at the testing hangar. The smell of fuel mixed with that of hot metal. A young mechanic lay on the ground, unconscious, with a head wound and his leg trapped under a piece of the landing gear. Without thinking, Omar knelt down and began to act with surgical precision. His firm voice cut through the panic in the atmosphere. "Bring me a crowbar and clean bandages now," he shouted without hesitation. Claudia watched motionless as that man who until that morning was just the janitor directed the emergency like a veteran commander. Within minutes, he improvised a splint, controlled the bleeding, and freed the young man's leg with the help of other employees. When sirens were heard in the distance, Omar had already stabilized the injured man. The first paramedic to arrive stopped in surprise when he saw the work done. "Who treated the patient?" he asked. "He did," Claudia responded, pointing to Omar. The paramedic nodded, impressed. "Good work. This saved his leg and probably his life." The murmur among the employees grew. Claudia felt a knot in her chest. She approached slowly and said in a low voice, "I don't know how to thank you, Omar." He cleaned his hands with a towel and responded, "I didn't do it for you. I did it because I know what it feels like to lose someone when everyone just watches." That phrase was engraved in Claudia's mind. That night, she couldn't sleep. She searched through the company files, personnel records, and discovered something that left her frozen. Omar didn't have a common history. His previous file belonged to the Air Force, decorated for rescue missions in natural disasters and conflicts. He had disappeared from the records 6 years ago, right after an air accident in which 3 of his comrades died. The next day, Claudia waited for him at dawn, right at the heliport. When he arrived with his work uniform and his mop in hand, she stopped him. "I read your file," she said without beating around the bush. "I know who you are, Omar." He didn't respond, just looked at the horizon. "Why are you here?" she insisted with a softer voice. "Because here no one asks me about my past. They just let me work." A heavy silence enveloped them. Claudia lowered her gaze. "I judged you without knowing you, and worst of all, I made fun of you." "Everyone does," he answered serenely. "The problem isn't laughing. It's not having the courage to look beyond." His words hit her like a truth she had avoided all her life. Claudia, for the first time, felt the need to apologize, not as a boss, but as a person. "You're right, Omar. Sometimes we believe that value is measured by money, suits, or power, but today I understood that there are souls who have flown higher than any of us." He smiled slightly. "What's important isn't how high you fly, but what you do when you fall." Days passed, and news of the rescue spread throughout the company. Some employees approached Omar with respect. Others observed him with admiration. But Claudia couldn't get that joke out of her mind, which now weighed on her conscience. One afternoon, as he was finishing his shift, she approached him with a sincere smile and a set of keys in her hand. "Do you remember what I said that day?" she asked Omar, looked at her confused. "About the helicopter. I said if you flew it, I'd marry you." Claudia lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "It was a cruel joke. But if you give me the chance, I'd like to invite you to fly. No promises, no mockery, just fly." Omar watched her for a long time, and for the first time, a soft laugh escaped his lips. "I haven't flown in years." "Then do it again. Not for me. For you." The sun was setting behind the hills when they both climbed into the helicopter. The blades began to spin slowly, lifting dust and leaves. From the air, the city seemed distant, almost unreal. Claudia watched him pilot calmly, as if he had never stopped doing it. "You know," she said, looking out the window, "sometimes you have to lose control to understand who really has it." Omar smiled. "And sometimes destiny puts you to clean the floors of the same place where you learned to fly, just to remind you that humility also has wings." The silence of the sky enveloped them. For an instant, there were no hierarchies or labels, just two souls who had learned that respect is the true height. Upon landing, Claudia got out first, looked at him with gratitude, and said with a firm voice, "Thank you for teaching me that behind every uniform, there's a story that deserves to be heard." Omar nodded without seeking recognition. He walked toward the sunset with his mop on his shoulder, knowing that that day he had cleaned something more than a hangar. He had cleaned the pride of a woman and the blindness of many, Claudia watched him walk away with her heart tight and her eyes shining. She understood that some promises are born from ego, but others, like the one she now felt growing inside her, are born from respect. As the helicopter reflected the last ray of sun, an inner voice seemed to remind her of something she would never forget. You never know who's behind the mask. Appearances can deceive, but respect and dignity must always be non-negotiable.